What's up, man?
How's it going?
Welcome.
Thank you for having me, man. Huge fan.
Appreciate that. So, welcome to Before School Podcast episode number 5. We are honored to have a guest, Spencer Taylor, who is a man of many talents. You have spent the last several months in Ukraine on the front lines, so I definitely want to talk to you about that. You've also been heavily involved in revolutionizing education, and you were also spending time during the earthquake disaster in Turkey, helping out there. So I want to talk to you about that, and we'll get into some other things, because I first met you on the Randall Carlson geology tour, and
that was fun.
Right away we became good buddies, and that was about 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So let's start with Ukraine, man.
Yeah, fire away.
What's that been like for the last 6 months?
Yeah, I've spent about 5 months in Ukraine over the past year. I went there in August and I went out there with a humanitarian organization called Global Empowerment Mission, who I had met in the Amazon in 2019 during the Amazonian forest fires. And I just felt this calling to go help the Ukrainian people. I know there's all sorts of different opinions, different ideologies about the politics in Ukraine, but I was more so focused on the people that were caught in the war. I thought it was crazy that in, the modern day and age, we could have a war like this. It was pretty mind blowing. So I wanted, as a documentary filmmaker, I wanted to go see it for myself and see what it was really like on the ground.
So GEM, the organization, they brought you in to do what?
Yeah, they brought me in to kind of document what they're doing and to, go out there, kind of, just film what's going on and share it with the world. I think that's a really important thing is, you hear a lot of opinions about Ukraine or different things that are going on in the world, but those people that have these strong opinions aren't actually out there. So I think, there's a lot of value to being out there for yourself and experiencing it and sharing it firsthand.
Wow. And you're really putting yourself right in the danger zone. You're right next to the front lines. What's that been like?
Yeah, when I first went out there, I spent more time around a village called Bucha, which is just near Kyiv. So when the war started, the Russians tried to capture Kyiv, and they originally thought they could capture it in 3 days. And the Ukrainians kicked them out. So the Ukrainians successfully defended the northern part of the land, and Kyiv is kind of in the north center of Ukraine. I didn't know this at the time, but Kyiv actually used to be the capital of Russia. So before Moscow, Kyiv was the capital, and so it's kind of like a crown jewel. And the Russians really wanted it. Putin in particular really wanted it. They had intelligence that they thought they could get it. So what happened in Bucha was the Russians came in and they recruited prisoners from the prisons to go fight. And so they murdered a lot of civilians. There was over 500 civilians that were murdered in cold blood in the streets in Bucha. And so I got to interview those people for myself. I got to hear from people locally in Bucha that had, 13-year-old daughters that were raped, grandparents that were murdered. You can look it up for yourself, the Bucha massacre. And there's hundreds of other villages that had these similar types of massacres go down. And so I got to go in and see the damage for myself, and it was shocking. I mean, it's hard to even explain it right now, because it was almost like a game of Call of Duty. It's like every single building was destroyed. There was bullet holes everywhere. And from there, we started giving out humanitarian aid to the people that had survived, and just supporting them because, their grocery stores, their restaurants are closed. They have no access to supplies, so they need outside support. So that was our main mission there. And that spread to, now the front line is in the eastern portion of Ukraine. It's about a 600-mile front line, so it's huge. And these villages are kind of in a similar situation right now where, they need supplies. They don't have restaurants, grocery stores, any of that. And a lot of these people are elderly and they really can't leave.
Wow. So these are prisoners. These are Russian prisoners, a lot of these soldiers that are coming in and devastating these town of just civilians, and these Ukrainians are kind of just fighting for their home. I think with war, and when we look back through history, we often just look at numbers, like how many people died, how many people were on this side, and we get caught up in numbers, and what gets lost is the emotion. And what you're seeing firsthand is the emotion. What is like some of the emotions that you've encountered with these people who have been devastated?
It's hard to express in words what that kind of trauma is like, but it's immense trauma. And war is a really disturbing reality, and it's something I think until you see it and experience it, it's something that I wish it upon no one. I am very anti-war, especially after seeing it firsthand. So it's very difficult. These people are struggling, but also on the brighter side, they're unified. I've never really, coming from America where a lot of people in this Western society are very divided, the Ukrainian people are extremely unified. And before the war, they were divided. But because of the war, now they're unified. And so that's something that I've seen is a lot of our problems that we face on a day-to-day basis, I'm not saying they're irrelevant, but something like a war or something more catastrophic really brings into balance what matters. And you appreciate each other and you seek commonality and unity in times of crisis.
Wow. So what's the experience been like kind of going from this really intense war zone and then coming back to America where we do have this division?
Yeah. Coming from, a war zone or a natural disaster or a mass casualty event to coming back for me, it was coming back into Miami where, there's really no threat to your life. It's an abundant place and there's materialistic, abundance all around you. And then you also, for me, I've seen the divide in our country and in our society and how much that's amplified, when you come from an environment like that, and seeing how meaningless this divide is. And yet our mainstream media and so many people focus on it. So that's why I love your channel. I love what you're doing. I love what so many people are doing on the internet right now, because we're no longer talking about the same, divisive topics. We're actually now bettering ourselves and pursuing higher knowledge. So I think it's the best time to be alive right now. And yeah, there's so many good things happening.
I really appreciate the optimism, and I really appreciate what you're doing, because the images are worth thousands of words, videos are worth millions of words, and what you're doing with you're recording what's going on in the front lines, and there's no disputing what we're seeing. Like when you see that video, you can have as much cognitive dissonance as you want, but it's right there, and it's kind of telling you this is what's happening. And so, yeah, your videos are so incredibly important. And you've also gone to Turkey, and you've done the videos there. So can you talk to us a little bit about the earthquake situation?
Yeah, now the front line has been pretty stable in Ukraine. And so if there's a major disaster, I'll go there and respond pretty much immediately after that disaster. And these the Turkey earthquakes were a major disaster. The Kahramanmaraş earthquakes, I believe the first one was a 7.8 or a 7.9, and then it was immediately followed just, I think, 6 hours later by another 7.8 or 7.9. So, we haven't, in recorded history, we haven't seen something like that. 2 earthquakes back to back like that. So it was a mass casualty event. What the media reports is around 50,000 deaths from every single city, government official, person that I spoke to out there. The number is much closer to 500,000 people that perished in those earthquakes. And I've just never seen destruction like that. Tens and tens of thousands of, high-rise buildings turned into dust and rubble. People were trapped under there. Bodies were being pulled out all over the place. I mean, it was really a very difficult situation to process. I'm still processing. I still am.
Why do you think there's such a big discrepancy in the number, the official reported 50,000 versus this number you're hearing on the streets?
This is very common in disasters. Any political party does not want that truth to get out for obvious reasons. You don't want to be responsible for negligence, because there was a lot of negligence in that area for the past, I believe it was over 25 years. The Turkish government was collecting earthquake taxes, which were supposed to fund a disaster like this. And so the local people out there were very, very angry of, how the support they were receiving. Many of them are still, there's millions of people still living in tents right now. A lot of buildings should have been condemned because they were built with a concrete that is not earthquake, proof. So there was a lot of negligence. So I try not to get too politically involved, but it is hard to look at a number like that and, being on the ground and talking to those people and knowing it's far more than that. The world deserves to know that, I believe.
Yeah, you're doing a great service by showing us we have to know what is happening, because here in the West we live such comfortable lives. We kind of almost like glorify, this war. It's like it's become so politicized that people use these like massive situations to kind of like advance their own political agenda, but they don't realize that there are people on the streets that are suffering because of these political ideologies that are getting pushed forward.
Yeah, those people should be our main focus. The people that are caught in the middle of everything, and we should always help those people. I'm not saying we should not question why this war is happening, or I think we should. I think we should challenge people that are so they have so many interests to start wars. I think we've seen that in previous situations. So I'm very anti-war. I'm very supportive of people speaking out against war, and at the same time, let's not forget, like you said, about the people that are caught in it. Let's help them no matter what. This is a reality. We have to face it, unfortunately. How can we support them? How can we help them get through it?
But yeah, unfortunately, we have massive industries, the military industrial complex, who is heavily invested in, when there is a war, they make a ton of money. And it's this double-edged sword. Like, we kind of need them, but there's a huge conflict of interest there, right?
Absolutely.
So I guess returning back to Ukraine, are things escalating?
Yeah, I think it could go so many different directions. What's been one of the most shocking things for me coming back from Ukraine is the amount of, I really don't like this word, but disinformation of people and very prominent individuals speaking very confidently about facts that are wrong. And one of those facts being, I've heard certain people, honestly, I'm a huge fan of RFK Jr., but he's very wrong with his reporting on Ukraine. He says for every 8 Ukrainians dying, there's only 1 Russian dying. It's actually the exact opposite. The Ukrainians have held their ground tremendously. I mean, movies will literally be made about what they've done. So their defense of their nation is just remarkable. And that information, it's really an information warfare right now.
Well, we'll give RFK Jr. the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
We'll give him a pass.
There's a lot of people that are just very confident about about the wrong information right now. And it's been shocking to see that, from being on the ground and speaking with Ukrainians, being in the front lines myself, seeing it, hearing all the stories. I'm speaking directly to the soldiers. I'm like I was in Bakhmut, which is, the bloodiest battle since World War II. Tens of thousands of Ukrainians and far more Russians. I mean, they're estimating over 100,000 Russian soldier casualties just during this winter offensive. So, I mean, it's hard to fathom those numbers. I mean, to us, when you turn on the media, you don't see any of this. You hear a little bit about the talks of the war, but you don't see the reality of it. The reality of it is not ideal. And so I understand why we don't want to see it. It's the easy route to not look at these things, to not pay attention to it. It's the easier route. But the more difficult route, but I believe the more liberating route, is to face the reality, face the truth, and, to then assess it from there.
And that's maybe how we pursue an off-ramp to this whole issue, is if we actually face it. Because as long as we kind of like turn a blind eye to it, these things can persist, So what do you think how does this de-escalate? Where's the exit for this whole situation?
I'm all for peace, whatever the path to peace is. But it's hard to, when I look at my ancestors, for example, I have ancestors that were in the Revolutionary War, Civil War. I'm sure many people listening to this also do. You had people that fought for our country, our rights. And that's what the Ukrainians are doing right now. So I believe it's over 90% of them do not want to give Russia any land. I think at some point there's probably going to have to be some sort of compromise. They're going to have to, have some sort of agreement. However, right now, which I'm about to go back out to Ukraine, this spring there's supposedly supposed to be a big spring offensive. So we will see how much the Ukrainians can take back. If they can take back a substantial portion of their land that they've lost, then maybe that has, kind of forces Russia to the negotiating table. But it's really hard to tell. I don't have the answers. I don't think anybody does. I don't think anybody knows. So that's kind of the scary thing, is we don't really know when this is going to end, how it's going to end.
Wow. And you said things right now are kind of at a pause because of the mud?
Yeah. So Ukraine, this is actually something I learned while being out there. Ukraine is known as the breadbasket of Europe. It has the most nutrient dense and the richest soil in all of Europe. So it's really a jewel of Europe. It's a very important asset. And it's also one of the reasons why the war is going on. Because, you might say, why are we fighting over this farmland? Well, this farmland produces a massive percent of the crops that go to Africa or developing nations, and crops that go all over the world, right? Ukraine produces the most amount of sunflowers, sunflower oil, sunflower seeds, than anywhere else in the planet. So this is extremely valuable land, and the soil itself, like you said, is so nutrient dense that it turns into mud, to the point where tanks get stuck. 4x4 vehicles get stuck. It is. I stepped in some of this mud because one of our cars got stuck in mud in the Donbass near the front line one time, and I stepped out of the vehicle and my boot sank down 5 or 6 inches into the soil, and I picked it up and it had just a block of mud on it. So right now, yeah, like you said, things are at kind of a standstill because nobody can move. Tanks can't move. So all of this weaponry that's been sent out to Ukraine, it's only a matter of time before we see, how effectively it's used. We don't know yet.
Wow. So once that ground hardens, it's like things pick up again.
Exactly. Exactly. Kind of after the spring, that's when, we'll see what's going to happen.
That must be some really serious mud.
It's very serious.
And that's just across the whole country.
Yeah. The entire country. It's like dark black soil. It's really unlike anything I've ever seen. It's pretty fascinating.
I never knew how Ukraine was known for its soil, but apparently its flag is wheat with a blue sky. That's
sunflowers.
Those are sunflowers.
Yeah, the yellow is sunflowers on the flag. The blue is the sky. Yeah.
And okay, I thought they were a big exporter of wheat as well.
They are as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these other countries around Africa, and they all depend on Ukraine to basically not starve. And
absolutely, and that's something that Putin knows, right? And what does Africa have? Africa has an immense wealth of rare earth minerals, right? They have some of the biggest reserves of these materials. So having Ukraine, whoever holds Ukraine, really holds a lot of leverage over Africa. That's something you don't hear the media talking about. That's actually really
I've never thought about that. Wow.
It's not very discussed. That's something I've been kind of able to discover on my own and hear about. But that's one of the main reasons why this is being fought over. You know, there is a global conflict, a global battle between these superpowers and these, you know, empires, that is Russia, China, United States, the BRICS nations, you know, the US dollar. There's so many different interests, but Ukraine is important, and whoever does hold Ukraine holds a lot more power. So that's why it's tough. This is just it's so complex. You know, it's not as easy as just saying this was their fault, this was their fault. It's, you know, it's very complex.
It's interesting with modern wars because the world has become so interconnected now. It's like there's so much vested interest in these battles, and like the battle will happen in one specific geographic location, but you'll find that there's like this whole domino effect of giant interests that are backing this conflict right here. So behind Russia is maybe China is invested in Russia taking over Ukraine, because then they'll have access to those minerals as well. Because I know China is heavily involved in Africa and developing Africa. Excuse me, foreign affairs is not my strong suit, but this is really interesting to...
Likewise, yeah. I didn't know anything about this until I went into the conflict and started to interview people, talk with people, and I've learned, you're 100% spot on. I mean, Africa is something that people are, these countries like China, Russia, United States as well, they're all involved in, and they have a vested interest in, especially with, I think what people don't realize is we're making decisions every single day with what we purchase. So our phones, right? Our laptops, our electric cars, these all require minerals that are mined in Africa, that are mined in other parts of the world, that are mined in China, that are mined in Russia, wherever they come from, right? And so, yeah, we might not want war, but if we're purchasing these products, if we're moving towards a more technological society, I mean, we're expected to, I think it's triple our amount of usage of rare earth minerals by 2035. Don't quote me on that. You know, it's the amount of rare earth minerals that we're going to go through within the next couple of decades is going to increase rapidly. So,
well, hopefully we can discover an asteroid out there with some of these minerals on it.
Yeah, rope it in and gently bring it in.
So what is your organization doing exactly out there?
Yeah, so Global Empowerment Mission is involved in distributing humanitarian aid. So we are a NGO. We do not receive funding from the government. It's all private funding. So in the initial phases of the war, we received funding from the general public. And now we got a grant through the Howard Buffett Foundation to continue and to really ramp up this work. So we're servicing over 100,000 families along the front line every single month. And you know, those deliveries are not easy. You know, you have to take a semi in to about 5 to 10 kilometers away from the front line. And then from there, you have to manually offload the semi with volunteers, Ukrainian volunteers, into smaller vans. Those vans are loaded up and then they're taken into the conflict zone. And that's difficult. You know, I've gone on dozens of missions inside the conflict zone to cities like Avdiivka, Bakhmut, Ugledar. There's actually a city called New York on the front line of Ukraine. So I've gone to a lot of different cities, and, you know, you're going into zones that are being actively shelled. You know, I've been in situations where there's explosions just, you know, a block away. You know, so yeah, it's a very difficult mission. It requires a lot of people working in harmony together. And I just have the utmost respect for the Ukrainian people. I mean, they're some of the most brave individuals. They're supporting each other. It's not about what political ideology. It's not about any of that. It's about helping people that need help. It's about getting food, getting supplies to people that are living under buildings that are being bombed every single day.
And when you roll in with your truck, what is the response from the locals? Are they thrilled to see you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. They're so grateful. They're extremely grateful. And we regularly supply these people. So it's not just one-offs. We're not in taking photos and leaving. We're establishing supply routes, and we're servicing these people. And we do it on a randomized schedule so that, we can't be targeted, because it's kind of one of the, the risky things about that line of work is that there are drones, there are, all sorts of ways that you can be spotted. A couple weeks after I had left, there was a couple close calls that we had. A couple weeks after I had left, one of our vans took shrapnel from a shell that landed close enough, obviously, to have shrapnel hit the van. So that was a close call. And then I stayed overnight in a city called Avdiivka, and the night after we left, a shell hit the building that we were staying at, but didn't explode. So they sent me videos, and they were like holding the shell up. Like, I wouldn't hold that.
Wow.
But yeah, this shell came in. It was a Russian shell. It smacked off the building, landed on the ground, and it did not explode.
Are you armed out there?
No, personally, I'm not. The people that I'm with are. It depends on where we're at. Some places you don't have to be, because like I said, the front line is relatively stable. But certain places, if you're like really close to the front line, like if you're within a kilometer, then, we typically do roll around with some Ukrainian special forces, some people that are armed, just in case.
Are you wearing like bulletproof vests?
Yeah. We have bulletproof vests, ballistic helmets. It's just good for shrapnel. If you take a direct hit, that's not going to do too much. But if you receive shrapnel, it definitely can prevent some injury.
That's wild. I mean, people may not know your backstory, but you were on Logan Paul's Implosive podcast. Mm-hmm. You have a successful YouTube channel, very successful business, Vybe Source, influencing tons of people. You have this like awesome life. You're running triathlons. You have this very put together life in America. What is driving you to kind of like put that to the side and drop everything and go to this very dangerous situation?
That's a good question. My ancestors, many died fighting for the freedoms that I have today. So I grew up, pretty oblivious to that. Just, like a normal average kid playing video games, like just kicking back. But as I've grown older, I've really realized that freedom is not free. And if you do not maintain and fight for those freedoms, you'll lose them. And I know, my sixth great grandfather, I actually just discovered this recently, is a Revolutionary War hero. And there's a monument built after him in the East Coast. And so I just think it's a part of my duty to uphold those freedoms. And I also think there's an immense privilege that we have in America and a safety, because we're defended by these two oceans. So maybe not our freedoms are directly at risk in a physical conflict, but there are other people in the world that are. So I have an immense amount of respect for veterans, for people that are in the armed forces, because their heart is in helping other people. So I think that's the most selfless act, to notice other people that are caught in a conflict, notice other people that are trying to defend their freedoms. Because actually during the Revolutionary War, we had help from the French. We had help. We had outside help to establish our nation. So when you really look into our history, why don't we extend that favor to other people? Why don't we show up and help other people that are doing that? Sure, maybe we do have to sacrifice a little bit. Maybe things are going to get a little more expensive. Maybe life is going to get a little bit tougher. But maybe that's the cost that we have to pay to defend our rights, or to help expand freedom to other places in the world. And I'll say, I got to go to China myself. I have an immense respect for the Chinese people. I loved my time in China. But the Chinese government is extremely oppressive. You cannot talk negatively about the president, about anybody in the government, or else you can get thrown in jail. Every street corner is loaded with cameras, so you're being tracked every single where you go. All your money is on your phone. You don't have cash. So every transaction, every penny that you spend is tracked. So I would say to people, if you're prepared to give up your rights, maybe you should go to a place like that and check out what it's really like. And once you experience that, you'll realize how valuable it is to fight for your rights.
Wow, that was powerful. And it seems like we are marching towards more of an authoritarian, or at least there's quite a few people that are kind of beating that drum that that want the government to get bigger and have more power. Where do you think that desire comes from in people to forego responsibility and make the government have more authority?
It's a good question. I think it comes from a few areas. I think generally it comes from people not knowing who they are and not truly knowing themselves and not knowing where they come from. I think there's this movement now to oversimplify and vilify history rather than studying it in its entirety. And when you're a true student of history, you know how complex it is. And so I think it's a lot of people don't know where we do come from because there's an oversimplification and there's a vilification of our history rather than a true understanding of the complexity of it. So I think the more you understand history, the more you realize that this is not the first time this has happened where a society moves to centralization of power. You know, this is how the Roman Empire collapsed. I'm sure this is how the Greek Empire collapsed. I'm sure this is how the Egyptian Empire collapsed. So is this, are we looking at the collapse of our nation? Possibly. But I think we also live in this technological age where we have, people like yourself, the people like the Joe Rogans. There's so many different voices, that are speaking out. But there is an assault on those voices. There's an assault on those people. And we have to stand together. I think at the end of the day, we have to stand together and we have to defend some of these rights that were built into our Constitution that so much of the world has modeled their systems off of. And people might not realize it in America, but so many people look to us for inspiration, right? And I think it's important that we unite, and I do think we are. I'm very optimistic, actually. I think that, these assaults on individual rights and these things like we saw a lot during the pandemic, but I think it's actually unified a lot more people. I think it has created more of a divide. So this battle, if you will, is not over. So I think we all know that. I think we all know at any moment there could be another assault on these rights, so we have to stick together.
There's two fundamental truths that I've been thinking about a lot, and I think at the core of this divide, one side is seeing this truth and the other side is seeing this other truth, and both of them are actually kind of true at the same time. And one of the truths is that suffering is unbearable. It's endless. There's so much suffering in the world that you could never stop it all. There's so much suffering that your heart breaks for it every second. And it is our job to do everything we can to prevent suffering and prevent it wherever we can. At the same time, another truth is everything is perfect. And those two conflict each other. Like you look at all that suffering, all the trees falling over, all the earthquakes, all the catastrophes, if you zoom out, it's all part of this like harmony, and it's all perfect. And I think the other side tends to be characterized as like believing in God because God created everything. So it's all perfect, a response to people who maybe want to combat the idea of God is they say, okay, if there is a God, why is there cancer? Why does a 10-year-old kid get cancer? And I think it's because both these two ideas are true at the same time, and we should hold both these in our hearts, that it's all perfect. We should see everything as perfect, but we should also try to alleviate suffering when we can. That's like the idea of helping your neighbor, be a good neighbor. So, and I think if I'm steel manning both sides, I think that maybe the liberals they see suffering and they want to stop it. They see a homeless person, they say, we need to house this person, we need to give them clothes, shelter, food. That's the role of the government. to help everybody and level the playing field. And then you have this other side that's saying, look, life isn't perfect. Things aren't fair. And you kind of have to like make your own way in the world. And I think that was more the mentality of the country when it first started. Because if you look at the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, everything, the sentiment was very much about like, we want protection from the government. We're not entitled to anything. Mm-hmm. You know, we just want to be left alone, basically. And we want a small government. I think that sentiment came from the Revolutionary War. We were trying to get away from England ruling over us. So we were like, look, we just want to be left alone. We want our own autonomy and all that. And naturally, as a country goes on, the government always gets bigger and bigger and bigger. There's more middlemen, bureaucracy, legal, the laws just keep growing and growing. And there's a quote I like from a Roman statesman. He said, the more numerous the laws, the more corrupt the state. And I think we're getting to a point where we just keep adding more and more laws, more and more temporary government programs that just never end. So that's my little rant. But
you're spot on.
Just to finish up, I think the mentality has changed where in the beginning of our country, we wanted to be left alone. And now we very much look to the government to do everything for us. We want housing, healthcare, welfare. We want to be provided for. And we've outsourced our education. We've almost outsourced our decision making at this point. And for some people, that is very enticing because you don't have to take any responsibility in that. If you don't take any responsibility, the trade-off is you don't have any authority. They will have authority over you.
Yeah, and freedom. So, it's like I think you had this in one of your videos. It's like the lion in the cage that's being fed, and it's rather miserable, or the lion that's out in the wild that is free. It's truly free. It has to get its own food, has to fend for itself, it has to deal with, you know, the diseases or the elements of nature. And yeah, there's a confrontation of, like I was saying, is who are we? You know, who are we? And I think when we ask that question, we understand that it's not about trying to avoid all suffering. Like, suffering can be a good thing, you know, like getting into a cold plunge. That's not fun. You know, there's a level of suffering that goes into that, but it is proven to enhance your life. Or working out. You know, you see it's a level of suffering, but it's voluntary suffering. You know, I think we should seek to separate, I think to even separate the idea of suffering. I think there's a good type of suffering that makes us better and that makes us stronger. And then there's the type of suffering in which is really unnecessary suffering, which is, you know, people can't get access to clean drinking water. People are going hungry. You know, there's wars that are, you know, destroying communities. I think it's about separating those two things. And one thing I'll admit is that the more I go into these experiences, the more I quote unquote know. I have to say that the less I know. And the more I do say, I don't know. But I am very grateful for God, for the Creator, for this experience. It's almost like as if Earth is this classroom where maybe we aren't meant to solve all the problems. Maybe it is a perfect balance and it is a classroom for our souls to come here and to experience and to grow and to learn. And we do have free will here. We can decide to be passive or to be actively involved. So that's what I come back to is I think that's what we have the choice to do. We have the choice to be passive and to say, that's not my problem, that's happening over there. Or we have the chance to be actively involved and to be a part of the solution. I'm not going to claim I know the answers, but if you look at the numbers of poverty, of people that aren't getting access to clean drinking water or eating, those numbers are going down. You know, it actually statistically is the best time to be alive. You know, the average life expectancy has gone up. So who knows? Maybe we're working towards something as humanity that we're working towards this golden age that we all talk about. But I don't think the golden age is just going to happen passively. I think it's something that we all have to contribute. And I'm of the belief, I am very much an optimist and not a nihilist. I believe there is a reason for all of this. And I believe that how we participate in this classroom is important. I don't know why. I can't tell you why. I don't know the answer. It's just an intuitive feeling. I think it is important. And I think that the more we do participate in it and the more we do help to make it a better place, who knows, maybe it unlocks a new dimension or a better place that we can go, the heaven that we all talk about in all these different religions and these ancient philosophies. Maybe this is what they were describing.
Dude, you are really inspiring me right now. I mean, hearing about your story, it makes me want to go drop everything and help out too. I feel this calling to, I see what you're doing, and it is really inspiring. And I think you are affecting millions of people.
Well, thank you. And I personally draw my inspiration from Jesus, to be honest. I grew up, in a religious household. I would say I fell away from religion, but Jesus as a person is incredibly inspiring for me because, this was a man that was speaking truths that the Romans did not want to hear. They were very threatened by it. So, I just try to walk and follow that Christ path, or, Buddha, whatever walk, right? Whatever.
Starting to look like him.
Yeah. Grew the hair out the beard.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I appreciate it. And I'm happy to hear that these things can inspire other people. And I just think it's important. I think that we don't really realize how powerful we are in this society that we live in, where everything is kind of taken care of for us, and this government, we're expecting the government to do everything. When we step out into our own power, man, we are powerful, and everything in this world will move out of our way or move into alignment when we do that.
I love that. And you just reminded me of my favorite story in the Bible. The one I return to a lot is the Good Samaritan. And, it's interesting, like, where do we get our morals and principles and values from? It's not facts. It's stories and narratives. And that's what religion, that's the good side of religion. That's what it can provide, because we've done away with religion a lot in our culture. And, in a way that's good. We can all have our own relationship with the divine, but there is benefit to having a code of morals or a common belief system that ties us together. And you're seeing we're getting fractured, but the Good Samaritan story is, Jesus was talking to a group of Jews, giving a talk, and there was a legal scribe in the group. He was a lawyer, basically a lawyer, and he kind of wanted to test Jesus. He wanted to see if Jesus was really this like holy man that people were saying. So he was like, Jesus, what's the meaning of life? What's the meaning of life? Kind of like to test him. And whenever Jesus would feel like people were kind of being disingenuous, he would respond to them with a question. He said, well, how do you read it in the law? Because you're a lawyer. And the guy was like, sarcastic. He's like, love your Lord, love your neighbor like yourself, and Jesus is like, all right, you know it. Good. And the guy is clearly not satisfied with this answer. And so he was like, who is my neighbor? Who am I obligated to love, huh? To kind of like, and so Jesus then told that really great story of the Good Samaritan, where the Samaritan was traveling down the road to Jericho. He got mugged, he got beaten almost to death. And then, he's lying on the side of the road, dying. And here comes a priest. And everybody in the audience, Jesus is telling this story to a big audience. They're like, oh, a priest is going to help. Priest is going to help for sure. The priest sees the guy and says, I don't know what's going to happen to me if I help him. I better keep walking. And they're like, oh, the priest didn't help. And then a Levite comes. And they're like, oh, a Levite will help. He's another like holy type dude. And he walks by and he's like, if I help this man, what's going to happen to me? That's the frame of thinking. So he kept going. And then sorry, I messed up this story. It was a Jew that got beat. Then a Samaritan walks down the street or walks down the path, and the audience doesn't like Jews and Samaritans had a feud. So they were like, oh, Samaritan's not a good person. It's like Democrats versus Republicans. If they're like, oh, no. If you're talking to a group of Democrats and you said a Republican was walking down the path, they'd be like, oh, no, Republicans are bad. So Jesus saying, okay, here comes this Samaritan. They were like, this guy won't help. And what did he do? He put the guy on his own donkey. He cleaned his wounds. He helped him out. He brought him to the nearest inn, paid his tab, and he was like, take care of this man till he's fully better. And if the tab exceeds the money I gave you, I'll come back and I'll complete the tab. And then so Jesus turned to the audience and said, so who of the three men was good? Who was a good neighbor? And the crowd, everybody was like, well, the Samaritan. And then Jesus was like, good, go and do as he did. And I love that story because it changes your frame of thinking. Because like you're always like, what am I obligated to do? Like, what will happen to me if I help out? And I think that story shifts the thinking so that you're like, am I being a good neighbor? Like you walk by a piece of trash and you're like, I can't pick up all the trash on earth, you know? Like what is me picking up this one little piece of trash going to do? But then you think, am I being a good neighbor? And then you pick it up with not because you have to, but because you want to, kind of. And it's a totally different mindset. And it's like, instead of trying to make the world a better place, it's kind of like you just be like, if everybody on earth was acting like you, would the world be a better place? It brings it to the inner world. And I think a lot of people are demoralized because they think, okay, we have these big issues of climate change and terrorism and disease and whatever, you know, what is my little action going to do to affect any change? And it's kind of like all you have to do is just make your own situation better. Just be a kinder, more generous person, and that will have like a ripple effect outward. So I always think about that story.
Yeah, I love Gandalf when he talks about, you know, it's the little acts of kindness and love that keep the darkness at bay. You know, it's not like the great deeds. I think that's such a powerful story, and I see the tendency in, you know, I'll just talk about my own experience and what I did. You know, when I kind of started going down the inner path of discovery, or the spiritual path, if you will, I almost felt like I was better than other people for having this knowledge or knowing more than somebody else, and seeing somebody struggling. You know, it was almost I had to check myself. It was looking down upon somebody. But, you know, I had my mentor, Bob Proctor, once told me, he said, if you look up to somebody, you'll look down on somebody. And so it's about viewing everybody on the same playing field and understanding that we are all part of the same substance. So it's about putting yourself in their shoes. And when we do that, we really ask ourselves, wow, what is that person going through? You know, and you start to relate and you start to see yourself in them. That changes how you actually treat and act towards people. And I see that tendency in spiritual communities where it is kind of like there is this holier than thou, you know, because we know these things, because I do these things, I'm better than other people. But to your point, when you pass that person who's sick on the street, or when there's something going on in the world, are you know, showing up, or are you really more concerned about yourself and distancing yourself from those things? So I would encourage everybody you never know what action you have on a daily basis. Like maybe you think, I can't pick up all the trash in the world, but maybe you pick up that piece of trash and somebody else sees you. They drive by and they say, that's good, I'm going to pick up a piece of trash next time I see it. Maybe they pick up a piece of trash, and then maybe their kid picks up trash and then starts a movement to, you know, end plastic on the world. I'm serious. I know it sounds like maybe, you know, like that's not going to happen, but it is. It's the little acts. It's the tiny acts of kindness and love that can shift the whole thing. That's
so great. And there's usually not any glory in it. I think we've become kind of a virtue signaling culture, which virtues are great. You know, I think that it's great that people want to do things, but I think the virtue signaling is kind of when they want the glory of being good without actually doing anything. And I see a lot of that. Are you noticing that as well?
Yes, absolutely. You had a video about virtue that I really loved, and, you know, it's the virtuous people aren't the ones going around saying, look how virtuous I am. They're actually the people that you don't know. again, that's why I have a tremendous amount of respect for the veterans and like, the people who go and give their lives or fight for a country. They are not doing it for the glory. There's so many people. It's really, we're standing on so many people's shoulders just by being alive that we don't even realize, that maybe we don't wake up and give credit to. But there are so many people that have died, that have given everything for us to just be able to talk with each other, to share ideas. So I try my best to start every day from a space of gratitude and from a space of honoring those freedoms and those rights that I have, because I know other places in the world don't have those same rights. So I try to have a constant reminder of that.
Gratitude is so important. I've noticed that you're either driven by gratitude or by resentment, and it kind of always falls into those two categories. And yeah, so I could go off on this. This is a good topic.
Yeah, I
but
love that.
What I really also wanted to ask you about is you've got this amazing mission to change education, which is an incredibly important mission. And you've got this documentary that you've been working on for how many years?
Almost a decade now. I started it in 2015.
Wow. You've transformed in that decade.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So can you tell us about what are the problems with our current education system? How much time do you got?
That's a good question. I think when we're talking about the education system, we have to kind of, really separate, 82% of people in the United States go to a public school. There's over 100,000 public schools. Those public schools are operating really with an outdated operating system. It'd be like having the iPhone 14 that's operating on the 2 software. Change within the education system happens at a very slow pace. And there's just so many systemic issues with education, but I think, the main issue is, we just have it backwards in America. I look at the origins of education, when we take it back to Plato's Academy, when we go back to ancient Greece, where some of the Western ideas of thought and education come from. You actually look at the word education, comes from the Latin word educo, or edicere, which means to draw out or to develop from within. And so you look at our modern day education system, it's almost the exact opposite. It's how do we fill this person's mind, or this young person's mind, with everything that we think they need to know. When in all reality, that's the exact opposite of what education is. Education is about, no, you're born with something within you. And it's about our mission. It should be guides, not teachers. We should be guides to help each individual child express that. And our modern day education system is rooted in the industrial militarized mindset, which is creativity or individuality, or our uniqueness is actually a threat. It's a threat to the society because it cannot be controlled. And this isn't a conspiracy theory, this is fact. Our education system was built in 1892 by the Committee of 10 and the Rockefeller Unit, which set out the standards of the American public education system. And their mission was to create factory workers. It's what our society needed. Now our society doesn't really need that. We have technologies that are automating things. We have artificial intelligence. We have all these different things that are actually eliminating the need for mindless jobs. So we're stepping into this age of abundance, but we're still using these old, outdated programs. We're using this old, outdated software. And so there's a lot of change happening right now within education, but it's in pockets. And not many people are aware of those pockets. And I think for so many decades, there's been a passive approach to education where we think, yeah, let's just drop our kid off at school and they're going to learn what they need to know to be a good, healthy.
It should definitely be fine.
Is it working?
Yeah, it's recording.
I'll take a peek over.
All right, so
I'll try to keep the screensaver off then.
all right, folks, for the dozen of you out there watching, we everything we had the most amazing conversation, and of course the thing cut off before that amazing conversation was
It
had.
happens. It happens to the best of
So
us.
we're gonna try to recapture that magic.
We'll do it. We'll capture something. Hopefully it's magic. So where did we leave off?
So you were telling us the problem with education.
The problem with education.
You can probably just start it while Leanna's here.
Yeah.
Well,
it's
make it more entertaining.
It's such a, there's so many different problems. There's so many different issues. So it's about, I think the main problem is the current education system is operating on an outdated software. And it was really built in the late 1800s for the Industrial Revolution. It was built by, the Rockefeller Committee. It was built by the Committee of 10. And it was designed to create factory workers. They were very open about that. That's what the society needed. And they were very open about creativity and individuality being actually a threat to the Republic, a threat to the corporate interests at the time. And so you see it all the time today. You see schools still operating with these principles of memorization, of different ideologies that really go against what the actual meaning of education is. When you trace the word education back to the Latin origin, you find that the Latin word for education was educo or edicere, which means to draw out or to develop from within. So, the Platos, the Aristotles, the founding fathers of education knew that education is a process that happens from within, and it's something you express. When you look at our modern day education system, it's the exact opposite. You're forcing information in, and you're determining what you think these kids should know, these young people should know, rather than identifying the brilliance that they're born with, the creativity that they're born with. And in my film, I get into a couple studies that really, I guess further the argument that I'm making now. So I'll save that for everybody to watch the film. I think you can learn a lot. But overall, there is a huge need for education. There's a lot of change happening, a lot of change needed. There's pockets of change happening all over the country, all over the world, but people aren't necessarily fully aware of those. And so that's what I'm on a mission to do with this film, is to bring more awareness to these individual solutions and bring more awareness to parents and people, young people in particular, that, we can change based on the decisions that we make, based on taking our education back into our own hands. And that's why I love your channel and so many voices out there on the internet right now, because, we're learning so much more on the internet and through our own individual passions and our own curiosity than we would in a classroom where someone's just telling us what to do and we don't have any relevancy as to why am I learning this? How is this going to benefit me? We now get to decide, what do I want to learn? What do I want to explore? And sadly, for a lot of people, that curiosity that light has kind of been turned off because of the education system, because they've been drilled so many years with facts that just simply aren't relevant to what they want to learn.
And this mission, this journey you're on, has taken you around the world. How are other countries doing education differently?
Education is happening in so many different ways all across the world. I went to China for the film, Hong Kong. I went to Finland. Finland was actually one of the countries that really blew my mind for a couple different reasons. Finland spends the most amount of time in recess and outdoors than any other nation in the world. They spend the least amount of time testing. In Finland, kids from K through 12 only take one standardized test. In America, the average child today takes 118 standardized tests. Yet the kids in Finland score some of the best scores in the entire world on standardized testing, and yet they spend the least amount of time. So in Finland, there's, I believe it's 60 minutes at the very least, but for younger kids, it's even more. It's 90 minutes of unstructured playtime is mandatory. In America, you look, in many places, they've eliminated recess completely. You know, after 5th grade, the majority of this country has eliminated recess. So, yeah, I think we can learn a lot from what we see with other countries. And it's really something that we should embody. But Finland based their system off of American research. That was one of the most shocking things that I learned, is that there's a lot of Stanford research, just a lot of different, cutting edge neuroscience that they paid attention to. They threw out the industrial model in a lot of ways, and they innovated. And look at what it's done for them. So why don't we do that? We should. That's what I'm a huge proponent of. I think it's something that is possible. We can change. We're just choosing not to for some reason.
Well, I think we're seeing a huge shift in where people are sending their kids now, because 1 point something million people are not going to college compared to pre-pandemic numbers. I think you just told me a million less kids are entering the public school system.
Mm-hmm.
So where are these parents putting their kids as an alternative?
Yeah, well over 1 million people pulled their kids out of public schools. And what became popular, I think what was one of the benefits from the pandemic, which there's not many benefits, but there was a lot of kind of change that the pandemic forced. And all these kids came home during the pandemic, and parents got to see what they were learning or lack thereof. And so parents started to create what are called micro schools, or what are being called micro schools, which essentially is like a homeschool, but the majority of people don't have time or the energy to homeschool their kids. So what these communities are doing is they're gathering, let's just say there's a dozen families in the community that are all like, yeah, I don't want to send my kids to the school all day. Let's create our own school, and let's all pool together resources, and let's all send our kids here. What's really exciting right now is there's legislation in 15 states. It's actively being worked on in many other states, where parents are now able to take some of the funds let me explain. Each in America, each state collects taxes from individuals, and then that money goes to whatever school your child goes to. So the national average is something around $12,000 per student per year. So if you're a student, so for me, let's say I was going to a public school. My public school was receiving, in Michigan, I think it was around $9,000 per year for me to go to that school. So now for the first time, this is really like revolutionary. Parents are able to take that $9,000 and spend it on their own child's education. So now the access to being able to create these micro schools, or to direct your funding how you want it to be directed, parents are now able to take their education back into their own hands. So this is really powerful, because every year you're paying taxes, you don't necessarily get to decide how that's all spent. Now that's starting to change. You can actually determine where you send your kids and where that money goes. So it's revolutionary. It's changing the system.
Are we seeing a difference between kids in public school and kids that are not in the system?
Yes. The short answer is yes. They're students that are in a homeschooling environment spend way more time focused on their passions. They're in, a safer environment in many cases. We see with the rise of school shootings. So their stress is lower. They're in more of like a home setting, which is proven to have kids more relaxed. And when you're more relaxed, you actually learn better. So kids are spending, again, it's kind of like the Finnish model, right? They're spending less time in school, but they're performing better on the tests. Because when you're in a micro school or a homeschool, you still have to do state testing, unfortunately. It's part of the standards. You can't escape the standards. So these kids are performing better on the standards, but they're spending less time. And I was just at a micro school in Arizona yesterday, and all the kids were talking to me about how there's no homework. So it's just like the Finnish model. So I don't, if I was the Secretary of Education, I'd be like, look what Finland's doing. Why don't we try that? Because our system is obviously not working too well.
I am amazed when I meet young people from other countries. They speak 3 or 4 languages, and it's not a big deal to them. They know the politics of almost every country. They're very literate, and they speak quite well. They speak English better than people that are native speakers. And I know we talked about Ukraine earlier. Most Americans can't even point to Ukraine on a map, but they have an opinion on it. So, but we unfortunately, we had 20 minutes of our conversation that got cut off, and we got into a really good conversation about, is there an importance to these standards? Like, can we just throw away all standards? I mean, we have occupations like pilots and doctors. I mean, don't we need some sort of standard for certain jobs?
Yeah. There's this movement right now where some people are concerned because we are kind of moving towards throwing away, certain standards for college entrance, for example. Like, we're getting rid of the ACT, SAT, or we're trying to make things more equitable. I know you were talking about that. There's a big push. Maybe you could talk about that. But I think certain standards are essential. Whether it's a pilot, whether it's a doctor, a dentist, you want to have at least someone who can operate at a standard. However, I think when we set standards, we're actually teaching to an average rather than teaching towards mastery. And I think mastery is really what we want to focus. How can we help kids become masters at whatever it is they want to do, whatever it is they're passionate about, and how can we guide them in that? I think for too long, again, this is an industrial artifact where we set these standards of we need factory workers to be at this level. We don't need them to be independent, creative, free thinkers because they'll start doing their own thing. We don't need that. We just need them to be at this standard. Anybody above that, they'll go start their own business. Anybody below that, sorry, you're on your own. So a standard is, in many ways, it's holding back the best, and then it's leaving behind the people who are performing the worst.
It's all about incentives, right? I think there's a famous quote: "Show me the incentives, and I'll show you the result." If the incentive is the standard, people are going to do just the bare minimum to reach that standard, and then they'll be good. Kind of like you were saying, people forget 98% of what they learn on these tests, the way we conduct tests right now as it is, because it's all about just memorizing that stuff for that one moment that you take the test, and then you can kind of forget about everything. It's not relevant. And so that's the incentives that we set up.
It's like a mile wide and an inch deep versus an inch wide and a mile deep. What do we want? Do we want a whole generation and millions of students having that mile wide and inch deep? Or do we want all these different people passionate about certain individual things, but being masters at that? I think that's what we want. We want, if a child wants to be a dentist, they got to go through whatever, the path is to become a dentist. And there are certain standards that you have to meet in order to be that. And if you don't meet that, then maybe that's not meant for you. Maybe you go a different direction, and that's okay. But unfortunately, we have a system at play that you could go into $200,000 of debt before you figure out that you don't meet that standard. So, that's an issue right now that we have to address.
Yeah. And how would you fix the college system? We were just talking, like, literally after the podcast ended, we started to go off on this.
Yeah.
And well, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is that with incentives, we've kind of screwed up the incentives with college. We've sold them on this idea that that you come here and you're going to get ahead. You are investing in yourself. And the thing is, these loans the $200,000 in debt that they go in, you can't file for bankruptcy on that. So there's no risk associated with that loan. So colleges kind of are able to do this risk-free. I'm kind of screwing this part up. I said it better after. I'll delete this part.
No, I mean, I think
I just stopped mid idea. I was like gonna go on, and I was like,
well, to your question, what could colleges do, or how could the college system change? It could eliminate, we could eliminate the fact that we can't bankrupt a loan. In 2005, that was signed in. It was a bill passed to make student loans non-bankruptable. Joe Biden was actually one of 18 Democrats that signed that in. And what that did, like you said, is it took away all the accountability of a university. So the university doesn't care if you're successful or if you fail. They got paid. Well, one of the best ways would be to hold them accountable. Hey, if you're accepting all these kids, 1 in 10 college graduates are getting a job in their field of study. I mean, that's abysmal when you talk about 1 in 10. I mean, imagine if you went and took a test and you came back with 10%. I mean, it's like, show that to your parents. That's not very good. So that's where our current system is at. We're completely failing.
But they're selling you on this idea that you come here and we're going to set you up for success.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest scams in human history, or in modern history. Is this idea that going to college is all of a sudden going to make you super successful. That's not true. And colleges need to be held accountable, and they need to feel the burden of, wait, if I just sign a blank check and they go here and then they fail and I don't get their money, maybe I actually have to care about where they go and how successful they are. Yeah, that would shake the whole system. Of course, they don't want that. They don't want that to happen.
So that would expose their bloated system.
Yeah, they would have to start caring. They would have to, colleges have become so swollen with administration, all sorts of exorbitant fees where they're really research institutions. You hear professors all the time talk about, even incentivize more to do research and less than they are to do teaching. So a university is, what are we even doing? Since 1980, with inflation adjusted, the cost of college has risen well over 100%, and the value, which is based on the average salaries of college graduates, has only risen 3%. So as soon as we started writing these blank checks...
I'm surprised it's risen.
Right, barely. As soon as we allowed, banks started allowing kids to just write blank checks to go to whatever school, universities took advantage of that. They said, okay, let's just raise our tuition. It's pretty obvious.
And the burden kind of falls on the student that took that investment, and it wasn't a good investment, but now they have to pay the price.
The burden fell on the student, and now if you look, we're rising up towards $2 trillion in student debt. So now that burden is not on just the student and not on just the people that went to college. It's on our whole society. Because now you have people that are enslaved, really modern day financial slavery, to a debt that's now they can't buy homes. Now they can't, spend that money in the economy. Now that money's just, where's it going? It's going to interest payments, which where's that going? To a bank. So we're really, in a sense, prioritizing the well-being of banks, of big banking, than we are the individual's education. It's really messed up. It's a horrible system. So, and people are responding, millions of people. Ever since 2011, college enrollment has been declining year over year. But because of the pandemic, it fell off a cliff. Over 1 million people, less people went to college. That's huge. I mean, these are historic numbers. And it's not a good trend. I think ideally as a society, we should want people to pursue a higher education. That should be something we want. But I think people are realizing, maybe I don't need to go to college for this 4 years to pursue that higher education. Maybe I could pursue it through this online program, or maybe I could just go out into the field and learn a trade or learn a skill. So I think it's happening right now. And unfortunately, I think people need to feel a lot of pain before they make some of those changes.
Well, yeah, that pain will come eventually, unfortunately. You reminded me of a story. My cousin, about in January, he came to me and he was really excited, and he showed me this paper. He's like, this is my final paper for college. And I'm like, okay. And this was written by ChatGPT. At the time, I was like, what? I don't even know what that is. He's like, AI wrote my final paper and I got a good grade on it or something. And I was like, okay, I get why you're excited because you like
Cheated the system.
You reached your standard, you cheated the system, but like ultimately, who got cheated? You are paying a premium for this education, and you outsource that to an AI bot, and you didn't end up learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the incentives that were created, though.
Yeah, it's when you talk about, you know, the biggest bubble in America, it's the student debt bubble. I mean, it's a frightening bubble because, to your point, I think we're moving away from a credential society, and we're moving more towards a mastery society. How good are you at what needs to be done? I think companies are waking up towards, wait, I'm hiring all these people with college degrees and they're not working. They don't want to work. But then this person who has way less experience, but they're super hungry to work, I'm going to hire them. You know, you're seeing companies like Tesla, companies like Google, companies like IBM, SpaceX, they're openly hiring people that don't have college degrees. This is the first time that's happened in modern society, where we're moving away from this idea, this kind of brainwashing that we all receive, that you have to have a college degree to be smart and successful. It's no longer the case.
And I think the colleges, maybe that's why these intellectuals at these colleges hate Elon Musk so much, because he's kind of tapping into this insecurity a bit. He's saying, hey, look, your degree's not worth anything. That's kind of what he's doing.
Absolutely.
And also what he did was he gutted Twitter. He got rid of like 80% of the workforce. And he was kind of saying, hey, look, these companies are bloated.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these people aren't doing anything. And like, yeah, the companies were fun. They had food and like bounce houses, and that was nice. They had concerts. That was cool. You know, who wants to work at some place where it's all about just like, what can you produce?
Yeah.
That's no fun. But I think he did expose that there's a lot of these people who got these high status degrees from these prestigious universities that didn't really have much societal practical value, but they were able to hide within these big institutions and get these cushy jobs that paid like $200,000 a year, where they're, you know, there's some diversity oversight person.
Mm-hmm.
And when push comes to shove, when times get hard, you know, those positions aren't super necessary. And so they get chopped off. And I think that Elon Musk doing that really triggered a lot of journalists and the elite and the establishment, because that's who they are. They are part of this established,
absolutely, this bloated
academic thing.
Yeah, that's a good way to the whole academic, the federal level. I mean, that's kind of indicative of like our whole society. It's very bloated. A lot of stuff is very unnecessary. People are waking up to that. They're going their own path. They're, you know, getting more in touch with different skills that are actually life skills, that are things that are needed, that are essential to a society. So yeah, I think we're moving that direction no matter what. You know, it's just about each individual making better choices, making more informed decisions. So yeah, I'm optimistic that more people will, you know, go a different direction. You know, I know for me, I'll just speak for myself. I'm not forcing or pressuring my kids to go to college. If they, at a young age, are really passionate about, you know, being an electrician or being, you know, developing a trade skill, or, you know, developing a creative skill or endeavor, I'm going to empower them to do that. And they're going to make a lot of money. They're not going to be in debt, you know, and they're going to be happy. Overall, that's the most important thing. They're going to be happy. They're going to be fulfilled. And I think this is, you know, this is the end. This is the result of the industrial education system. So we have to ask, is this the result that we want? Is this sustainable? And I don't think it is.
Now, we met on those Randall Carlson trips. And I remember Randall has such a great way of teaching. And I remember on that trip, he made me so interested in learning geometry and math and about nature, just because we went to a river and we saw all these boulders had been stripped from the sides of the canyon, and there were different sized boulders, and based on, you could tell where the boulders were stripped from and where they had been pushed to. You could calculate how intense the flow was, how deep the river got. You can make all these calculations just by like looking at the rocks and measuring the river. And I was like, oh wow, all this math is super handy. Mm-hmm. Like, I want to use this math, and it's so applicable here. And I think a lot of the things that you learn in school, it's hard to see how it's applicable.
Yeah, it's hard to see how it's relevant when you're sitting in a classroom, you're in a box, you're sitting at a desk, you're having somebody tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it, why. And when you question that, they just say, oh, it's because you're going to have to know it on the test.
You get punished.
Yeah, you're going to have to know it to get into college. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to learn it.
It's like the nail that stands up gets pounded down. So it just breeds conformity within these big education systems. Like Carl Sagan said, when he talks to kindergartners, they have all these amazing questions. Like, what's the moon made out of? Why is grass green? All these questions that adults don't really think about, but they're really important questions. And then Carl Sagan said he comes back after 12th grade, after they graduate high school, and they don't have any of those questions. And he says, wow, something horrible has happened over the course of your education. You've lost your curiosity. Mm-hmm. And I always remember that clip. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I have a study. I'm not going to get into it here because it's in the film, but there's a study that really proves what you're talking about, that this flame of curiosity, of creativity, of individuality is dimmed. And by the final result, you have millions and millions of people that are unmotivated, that are disconnected from their passion, that are simply just working a job just so they can make enough money to survive. They're making enough money to stay there, but they're still miserable, and they don't want to be there.
They're working just hard enough to not get fired. They're getting paid just enough to not quit.
Exactly. That was a quote, but I couldn't
George
remember
Carlin, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this has been an awesome podcast. Sorry that you cut out for a little bit, but we're very thankful that we had Spencer Taylor here, one of my great friends, super inspiring. How can people find you?
The main way is through social media. My handle Spencer Vibes, but also I'm releasing The Death of Recess here pretty soon, so I'm very excited for everybody to watch that. You'll find out about it one way or another, I'm sure.
Hell yeah. So this has been Before School Podcast, episode 5.
Let's go.
Thank you for bearing with us, the dozen of you out there.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
Peace. For the second time.